Hello, everyone. We're going to give everyone a few minutes. If you're in Florida, you know, the days are slowing down. So I want to make sure I give everyone a chance to jump on and we'll get this party started for sure. Hello. Welcome back. As you mentioned, thank you guys for joining us for another amazing week as we talk about weddings. So it's 8:08. So let's go ahead and get this party started. So today we're going to talk about wedding rentals that you must have. Now, just depending on, budget and all those things, there are a few things on this list that I would definitely suggest that you actually include as you're looking for the rentals that are needed. So, my name is Charlena, and I'm with Any Event Linen and Chair Rental, your boutique wedding rental company based out of Florida. So, with Any Event, we service weddings up to 150 guests or less. We provide linen, chairs, charger plates, the very important core components of a wedding ceremony and a wedding reception. So, if we can be of any assistance or provide any of our rentals for your upcoming wedding, feel free to send us an email at info@anyeventlc.com or jump on our website at anyeventlc.com. I think I said the same thing twice. But regardless, we'll drop the contact information down below. So, as mentioned, today we're going to talk about wedding rental must haves. We've seen so many couples who have kind of been on the fence about what they need, what they don't need. And I understand, you don't want to overdo it, but one thing for sure is you don't want to underdo it. And today I'll share with you some of the things that are definitely needed. And then there will be some components where it's like, it's just really up to you, your budget, the look and the feel that you're going for on wedding day. So, wedding must haves are definitely tables. Tables. Now, if you don't have tables, I don't know where your guests are going to sit during reception hour unless you guys are just standing up eating appetizers. But if that's what you're doing, that's completely fine. But if you're going the entire traditional route, the traditional route, you will need tables. So grab your pen. So the tables you'll need are cocktail tables, and of course, that's for cocktail hour. So while the guests, once they leave the ceremony space, they spend time together in between that ceremony and reception time. So during that time, of course, the couples will have their pictures taken, um, and scurry off and spend a little time together. So during that time, your guests, they will stand and talk and grab little bites to eat, and they will use the cocktail tables for that specifically. The next thing that you do want to do as we transition from cocktail hour is your food tables. So during the reception hour, if you're doing buffets, you're going to need the tables. Of course, your caterer has the food, but they'll need tables to put your food on. If you're doing plated, of course, you may not need the food tables, but you may need other tables related to the food. So, as I tell all of our couples, feel free to speak with your food company, sorry, your catering company, just to see kind of where they are. But if it is a traditional buffet or your family or friends bringing in food, you'll need food tables. Just always confirm how many are needed and the sizes needed. In addition to the food tables, of course, the guests have to have somewhere to sit. So you want to make sure that you have enough tables for all of your guests. Did you hear me? All of your guests, even the ones who decided, oh, I'm not going to come. Maybe I'll come. I'm not going to come. Maybe I come. Just make sure you have enough. As always, it's better to have too many than not enough. Always remember that. So, aside from your guest table, food tables, and cocktail tables, don't forget about your table for you and your new lifelong partner. And that's your sweetheart table. So we've seen round sweetheart tables and we've seen the rectangle tables. So as I've mentioned probably in previous videos, if you do a round table, that's your 48-inch round. It's small, it's perfect for you to, it's not this big massive table where you have to figure out, oh my God, how I'm going to coat it. I mean, how am I going to decorate it? What do I need to put on the table? All those things. With the 48-inch round, you can actually add your florals, and then you can add, like your charger plate, your flatware, glassware, all those things. So it's not massive, but it's round. And then, of course, you can do a 4-foot because that's perfect for two people too. So if you're looking for, just us and we want something intimate, I would suggest going the 4-foot rectangle and then a 48-inch round. And last but not least, if your wedding is not an adult only wedding, you'll need to either A, have a table just for kids, or B, you'll probably end up having additional seating needs because you have to be able to fit the children at the tables with their parents. So if you decide to just have a kids table, and this can seat all of the kids, of course, if you're doing your 60-inch, typically for adults, it sits 8 guests comfortably. And since they're kids, you can probably do 10, but always consider the sizes, literally the size of the children and their age. And I know too, with COVID and all these other things going around, some people don't like their kids sitting close. So you may want to limit the amount of children at each table. So must have tables. I've listed them for you. So put check mark by that one. So next, table linens. Of course, if you have tables, they have to be covered. If you don't cover them, I don't know. I don't know. And if that's the look and feel you're going for, then fine. But I would never suggest not covering the tables. None of them. So let's go ahead and talk about the table linens. So for the cocktail table, food table, guest table, and then if you're doing a gift table, sign-in table, and kids table, you can always go, your basic colors. So white, black, ivory, navy blue, blush, and gray, or whatever your wedding colors are. On the flip side, when we're looking at your sweetheart table, I love telling couples to, take it up a notch. This is when you would use a unique or a specialty linen for that moment. So if you're like, oh my God, I always wanted to use the velvet tablecloth, or I always wanted to use some type of sparkle, shine, sequin, that's when you would do that. Because a linen like that will cost you more than a standard polyester, or even if you're going up a notch like a Lemoire satin, that linen is going to be more expensive than what you're going to give your guests. So I would always suggest, if you want to go up a notch, go ahead and use that specialty linen for your table, sweetheart table. And as mentioned earlier, with the food tables, I always see couples who go the route of like ivory, white, but always remember this. When you have your wedding, the photographers, some are very mindful of the pictures that they take, while others, they just take all the pictures. So what I would suggest is get the table linens for your food tables, but get a dark colored linen. So let's say they're taking your picture of your guests here, and then behind is your catered food, let's just say. When they take this picture of the guests here, those linens are going to show. So imagine if it's white or beige, like all the juice from the from the buffet food is like rolling down the linen, or if it's like a drink station, all the punch juice is rolling down, and now you see it behind your guests that your photographer took a picture of. So I always tell our clients and our couples, like, think about that. You can never go wrong with black. Black is black. You can't see it. It just works. It works all around. If you're not a black linen type of couple, just go dark. That's just what has worked for us, and we know what couples want. We know that photography is a big part of the day, so always just be mindful of the food and drink tables. And then, in addition to the food and drink tables, also confirm the linens needed for your DJ or your musician, like if you have a band. Sometimes they do need linen, like the DJ maybe, or sometimes they bring their own, but it wouldn't hurt for you to ask. And if that is the case, a lot of times they use black too, unless there's a specific color that you want them to use. So linens, checking it off our list. So my favorite part is the wedding ceremony and reception chairs. Now, the wedding ceremony, there are tons of chairs. Typically, whatever your guest total is, you'll split it half and half. And then you have the aisle in the middle. Now, this is a side note, it has nothing to do with today, but when you're building out or setting up your chairs, if you haven't booked with us, because we provide complimentary setup and breakdown, what you'll do is you want to make sure your aisles are wide enough for 2 people. And so with that, that'll tell you how much room you have on each side. So that's just something to remember when you're looking at your venue again, just trying to decide the setup. So back to the ceremony. So in the ceremony space, remember this, the first row of the wedding ceremony, the first row on both sides, they typically have more chairs than the rows behind them, unless you're doing like the curve, because typically with the curve, so the seating is like this. I hope you can see my arms. So they're almost like a C, like this, right? And so typically, as you go back further and further, just like my finger here, more chairs are added. But if you're doing the traditional, straight line of chairs all the way back, or even, where they're slightly angled, so they're like they're like this. Typically, sorry, it's not a good picture, but they're typically angled. You'll have the same amount of chairs. So if that is the case, the first row would typically have more chairs than any other row. Now, in that first row, what you would want to do is that's where you want to seat your mom, your dad, your siblings, your grandparents, step grandparents, the real people who have, and not the real, but the people who have made a major part in your life. Now, if you have aunts and uncles and you want your immediate family to sit in the front, but maybe not the front row, you can sit them in the rows behind them. So maybe they're not in, row 1, but they can be in row 2, row 3, row 4, depending how many family guests that you want to include. So one thing to always remember too, if you don't book us, you're going to have to set up your own rentals, right? So with that, as I mentioned earlier, we provide complimentary setup and breakdown, and you won't have to worry about any of these things. But what you want to do is when you're setting up your rows, you want to make sure that you have enough room in between each row, because if not, people aren't going to be able to maneuver down each aisle, right? So I know I'm telling a lot of things, little secrets. So if you're in doubt, this is what you want to do. You want to make sure at minimum you and someone else can get down the aisle turned this way, because everyone's not the same width. Everyone's not this, you want to make sure that you have enough room on each aisle where everyone can fit down the aisle. So that's like number one, because it's nothing like having someone that can't fit down the aisle and then each row is like broken up like crazy. So good. Just remember, first row, that's where you'll sit your immediate family. And then you can reserve rows behind it for the additional family members. And another thing that a lot of people, I think they do overlook and take for granted almost, it does not hurt to rent additional chairs. What you have to remember is just because someone said, no, I'm not going to make it, I'm going out of town, it really doesn't mean that, because anything can happen and they can show up. So my suggestion, just based on experience, always order a few extra chairs so no one is left standing. If you don't get anything else out of this, you can have too many. But if your guest count is 72, I wouldn't get 72. I would get more. So think about that when you're ordering your guest chairs. So next, we're headed down to the reception, one of the funnest parts of a wedding. So one thing I always like to tell our couples is that sometimes we get, and with ceremony chairs, sometimes we get so focused on cost that we forget about comfortability. One thing for sure is that the ceremony and the dinner portion of your wedding, so like the reception portion, that is the time when people spend the most time in their chairs. So, with that being said, when you're looking for your chairs, you want to choose chairs with cushions and back support, of course, for your wedding reception. You want people to be comfortable. Yeah, they're not going to fall asleep. Yeah, they're going to be dancing and doing all of those things, but everyone's not going to be in that phase. So, what you want to do is always make sure that the seating fits for everyone, just so we know that comfortability is there. One thing that I always encourage our couples is to think about your attendees. In some cases, you may need stronger chairs. And so one thing I would ask the rental company is to confirm the weight capacity of each chair, just so you know that everyone is taken care of. Once again, having a few extra chairs is a good plan because it ensures no one is left standing during the reception. And my final on this, the guest spends most of their time in the ceremony and dinner chairs. So chairs do matter. So those last two things are really big components as you plan your rentals because you want to make sure that people fit and they're comfortable. So just think about that. So the next section we're going to talk about are the place settings. So now we're in the reception hour. The guests are starting to sit down. And when they sit down, we want them to be like, oh my goodness, look at this amazing place setting. So in most cases, the place setting is an extension of your wedding colors, the wedding design, and all of those things. Now, if you're just like, hey, I want to do a place setting for my guests, but it's not over the top glam, that's completely fine. It doesn't have to be over the top, but if you're having an over the top wedding, of course, I'm sure you'll take the extra miles to make sure that place setting looks great. So one of the things that, we get a lot of couples who are like, do we need charger plates? Like if we're doing place settings? And I'm like, of course. Like the charger plates are the decor component to each place setting. So yeah, if you don't want to use it, it's fine. But if you're gonna go to that extreme where you're like, hey, I'm gonna do a beautiful place setting for each of our guests, get the charger plate. Because what you have to remember is when they sit down, that'll be the first thing they see. And with that charger plate, you can add in like their nameplates. You can add in little thank you boxes with candies, or you can give them a rose, like whatever you choose. That place setting or that charger plate is the game changer for each place setting. And honestly, from my experience and what I've always read, was that even the place setting is great for food because it keeps the food warm. Now, aside from that, it's definitely a great place setting design decor piece, especially as your photographers come in and take pictures. Who wouldn't want to charge your plate? Like you see how beautiful it is. Now, at that place setting, you want to include the following. So you're looking at cutlery. So that's all the forks, all the spoons, all the knives. But if you're not looking to go that far, just make sure you have at least one fork, one knife, and one spoon. So that's 3 at each place setting. And then you want to go ahead and add your glassware. So that can be a red wine glass, a white wine glass, a water glass, and then a lot of times, or for most of the times, there are champagne glasses. So even if you're like, hey, I'm not going to have all these wine glasses and champagne glasses, at least have the water glass and one wine glass. So the individuals, if they want wine, they can have wine, but then there's still that cup for water. And remember too, your kids in the back, they're not going to need a wine glass. So no need for that. So you can even I wouldn't do glass cups for them or water glasses. I would definitely do something with a lid just so you don't run into any issues with broken glass or some venue, something like that ended up destroying the glass or destroying the floors at the venue. You want to have everything buttoned up. So like I said, so you'll have your cutlery, you'll have your glassware. Now, don't forget your plating. So if you're doing buffet, you probably won't have if you're doing buffet, you probably won't have plating at the place setting. But if the catering company is coming in and serving, you'll probably have plating. So just remember that too. And then, so I did say flatware, glassware. Yep, I said all that. Perfect. So one little thing that I decided to include that it's a part of it, but it's not as important, is if you're going to use the charger plates, another great addition in addition to your guest gift that was sent on top of the charger plate is possibly even a menu. And a lot of times they're either squared or more of a vertical rectangle, and you can put those either on top of the charger plate or put them inside of a napkin. So if this is this is the menu and this is your napkin, you can just slide it inside, or you can slide it inside like this. But a lot of times you'll see it like this. And so the menu portion will stick out. Sorry, guys. The menu portion will stick out of the top of the napkin. And then, like I said, if you decide not to do that, you can always add the gifts that sit on top of the charger plates or even on top of the napkins. It really just depends on your overall look and feel. And if you have a wedding planner, it's very important that you really lean in on them too when you're talking about design and what the place setting should look like. And then, of course, you can always reach out to us as we do place settings all the time. And, we know what looks good for at least the baseline. And as always, feel free to give us a buzz, go on our website, chat with our team, as we're always more than happy to assist in whatever way possible. But as I mentioned earlier, you guys, there are rental companies like ours that do provide complimentary setup and breakdown, and you want to make sure that you take advantage of that because, as mentioned, we know the distance that needs to be in between each rows. We know if that the first row has to have the most chairs. So a lot of ways that you can take these memorable components of your wedding day to take them off your list is to connect with vendors who do understand and they do it day in and day out. So as always, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat below. We're always excited to open and do anything and help you all however we can. As mentioned, feel free to shoot us an email at the contact information below or visit our website. As mentioned, we service weddings up to 150 guests in the Central Florida and West Florida area. Thank you guys so much for joining us for the 8th time. Thank you guys for joining us and have a wonderful evening. Bye.